The Jordan River has always been more than water. It's a line across time, a meeting place between what we touch and what we can only sense. Lately, people along its banks say the sky itself has started paying attention. They describe shapes that don't drift, like ordinary clouds, and movements in the water that don't behave like fish. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the stories are hard to shake. Some say the heavens are watching. Others say something ancient has stirred. Either way, the river is speaking and it's getting louder. Before we dive in, do me one quick favor. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the investigations we've got lined up next. Hit that button now, thank you, and let's wade straight into what witnesses are calling the most unsettling series of signs the Jordan has seen in our lifetime. The eye over the Jordan. It started with a circle in the clouds, too crisp to ignore and too steady to dismiss. On video, it sat above the river like a lidless eye, a bright, ringed opening that seemed to look back at anyone who looked up. People on the bank said it didn't drift with the wind the way clouds usually do. It hovered, it held, and the longer you stared, the harder it was to tell yourself it was just weather doing what weather does. Some called it an eye of God, others a warning, but almost everyone agreed on this much. It demanded attention. Those who know the scriptures think of passages about the unseen crowd of witnesses, the moments when heaven draws near and leaves a mark we can see. If you've ever read those lines about a guiding cloud in the wilderness, or a bright cloud announcing delight from above, you'll recognize the pattern. When clouds show up in the story, it's often because the author is close to the page. That's why this ring in the sky didn't feel random to the people who stood under it. It felt intentional, like a finger tapping the glass between worlds. A cloud of doves. Soon after, another report rippled through the valley. Dove-shaped clouds forming over the same stretch of water. The footage isn't Hollywood perfect, it rarely is, but the outlines are there, and so is the timing. The Jordan is the place where, in the old stories, a dove marked the moment a ministry began and the sky opened as if to say, "Pay attention, this matters." Seeing the form of a dove reappear above those waters has stirred people in a way that's hard to put into words. For some, it's simple nostalgia, a sweet reminder. For others, it's more like a knock at the door. The symbol of the dove has always carried a double-edged piece after judgment, and also a call before it. After the flood, the dove brought evidence that mercy had returned to the world. But if the shape of a dove shows up before a breaking point, maybe the message is different this time. Don't wait for the storm to pass. Choose your footing before it hits. That's what made the sighting feel less like a cloud trick and more like an alarm clock, especially to those who've been watching the patterns for a while. The serpent that broke the surface. Then came the moment that has everyone arguing. At dusk, when the river is dark glass, a long, shadowed form rose and rolled, then vanished as if the water had closed over it by choice. It didn't move like anything familiar, say the people who saw it. It moved with the kind of certainty you only see in things that own their territory. Phones came out. Lights shook in nervous hands. The footage is grainy, but the feeling it leaves is crystal. Whatever that was, it wasn't ordinary. Some reached for an old name, Leviathan, the way you do when there isn't a modern word ready. Ancient texts talk about a powerful creature of the depths, part symbol and part force, the kind of thing that stands for chaos itself. Whether you take that literally or not, the river isn't just any river. This is where thresholds were crossed, where people stepped from wandering into promise, where a mission began under an open sky. If a serpent-like presence is going to surface anywhere with meaning, it would be here, at a place where so many lines are crossed and so many choices get made. That's why the sighting rattled more than nerves. It rattled assumptions. Are the heavens opening? The eye didn't just look like an eye to everyone. To some, it looked like a doorway, the outline of a gate you could point to and say, "There." That's where the border thins. The language people used to describe it sounded like someone describing a threshold, a door that stands open for a while, waiting for a response. Think about it. The Jordan has always been a crossing place, a ladder in a dream, a whirlwind on one side of a river, a voice that says, "Come up." It's hard not to hear echoes when the sky itself forms a circle of light over the water, as if something is leaning close. Call it a portal, or don't, but the idea captures what many felt in their bones. It wasn't just that they saw something unusual, it was that the unusual seemed to be inviting them to decide. When you sense a door is open, you either walk through or walk away. You don't stay forever on the threshold. That's the kind of urgency people carried home that evening, the sense that the window is open now, but not forever. Birth pains. Across the earth, if the river events were isolated, they would still be worth a conversation. But the wider world is groaning and cracking in ways that make everything feel connected. Across continents, the ground shudders and the seas rush where they shouldn't. Whole regions burn under skies the wrong color. People use words like unprecedented until the word loses its edge. Others reach for older language, birth pains, because it fits the pattern better. Quickening, intensifying, waves of distress that suggest something is on the way, not just something is coming apart. That's how a lot of watchers hear these reports, not as a final collapse, but as labor. The earth isn't dying, it's straining. You can call that poetry if you like, but it's also a way to be honest about how it all feels. When the signs pile up, when waters recede where they shouldn't, and rage where they shouldn't, when fires find places they have no right to find people who have been paying attention, stop asking, "Is this random?" They start asking, "What is this preparing us for?" Echoes from other rivers. If you've watched the news from farther east, you know another river has been making headlines for reasons that sound like prophecy to some and policy to others. As its waters drop, a different kind of fear rises. Stories of ancient things uncovered, talk of strange sounds and stranger shapes, and that same old name surfacing again for the creature nobody wants to believe in, until they see a shadow too large to ignore. Skeptics point to climate, dams, and drought. Believers point to an ancient script where a river runs low before a cascade of hard days. The disagreement doesn't change the fact that people standing on that cracked riverbed are looking at the ground like it might answer back. What does one river have to do with another? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Sometimes the world doesn't send a single signal. It sends a chord, different notes played in different places that resolve to the same message if you have ears to hear. When the Jordan whispers and another river groans, some will shrug, others will say, "We've been told to expect this." Either way, the timing makes even the calm-minded sit up straighter. What if the signs are invitations? Here's a question worth asking. Even if you don't buy a single supernatural explanation, what if the point of signs is less about predicting dates and more about preparing hearts? The stories that shape these lands rarely give calendar. They give commands like, "Wake up, do not fear, make straight the path." That's why an eye in the clouds over the Jordan doesn't have to prove anything to make its point. It only has to prompt a decision. Watch or wander, return or drift, walk through or walk away. When a dove shape floats above the same water where a dove once marked a new beginning, the message is painfully clear. Even if you never quote a verse, you can start again. You can step into the river and come out different on the other side. That's what the Jordan has always meant. Movement, turning, crossing. It's a terrible place to get stuck, and an ideal place to change course. Facing the serpent without flinching. As for the shadow in the water, there are two mistakes to avoid. The first is to panic and turn every ripple into a monster. The second is to laugh off the possibility that there are powers at work we don't control. The older stories never deny the presence of dark, deep things. They simply insist those things have a leash, and the hand holding that leash is steady. If something stirred in the Jordan, let it be a wake-up call, but not a cause for despair. Darkness thrashes hardest when it knows the day is getting close. It's noisy at the end of the night. It always has been. That's why the right response isn't obsession with monsters. It's attention to the one who stills waters. The old lines about a serpent being finally dealt with aren't there to terrify. They're there to keep our courage from leaking out the bottom when we see a fin where there shouldn't be one. If a beast rises, the better story promises it won't be the last figure on the stage. That's the whole point of hope. It's not denial that there's a fight. It's certainty about how it ends. If the door is open, don't linger in the hallway. Let's talk about the gate idea one more time, because it sticks. When people saw that round opening in the clouds, they didn't just feel watched. Many felt invited. Invitations are time-bound by nature. They come with a moment to say yes. The Jordan teaches that rhythm over and over. A people on one side, a promise on the other, and a river in between. Sooner or later, you step. The water piles up or it doesn't, but you don't get to live forever on the bank. If the heavens are leaning close again, if that circle in the sky was more than a meteorological quirk, then the wisest thing you can do isn't to argue the shape. It's to respond while the shape is still there. And if all of this turns out to be misread weather and anxious imaginations, then choosing humility, reconciliation, and courage will still have been the right move. No one ever regrets preparing their heart. People only regret waiting until the door closes to wish they had moved. What it means right now. So here's where we land. The Jordan is stirring with stories. An eye that doesn't drift, doves that return, a serpent that breaks the surface, and a sense that the sky has a message it wants us to hear. Across the map, the world is shaking like something is waking up or winding down. The exact timing is above our pay grade, but the response is within your reach. Clean up what needs to be cleaned up. Speak to who needs to be spoken to. Choose the road that leads you toward life, not away from it. That's what thresholds are for. That's what rivers are for. That's what this moment feels like. An edge between what was and what can be if we cross. If you felt a nudge while watching this, if the thought of an open sky over the Jordan makes something in you stand up, don't ignore it. You don't need a crowd or a ceremony or a headline to do the next right thing. You just need to stop pretending you have all the time in the world. The people who saw the eye in the clouds didn't tend. They stood there and knew the clock was running on the light, on the moment, on the invitation. They weren't wrong. Final word. The river is still flowing. The sky is still open enough for a sign when we need one. If the Jordan has become a mirror, showing us the mixture of peace and warning, then maybe it's doing what it always has, helping people cross. Thank you for spending this time with me on the banks. If this moved you, or even just made you think twice, stay with us. There's more to uncover, more witnesses to hear, and more threads to follow. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you're here for the next chapter. Then do one more thing for me. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a nudge, and drop a comment telling us what you think you're seeing in these signs. Are they memories? Warnings? Invitations? I'm reading everything you write, and I want to hear your story too.